Who's that coming down the track? It's a mean machine in red and white. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Than a drunk obnoxious Georgia band. Go, go!
What's up, y'all? This is John and Caleb back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight we are talking to Chad from the Soonersmiths podcast about the Oklahoma Sooners in our opening interview of our Puncher's Chance series. We're super excited about it. This is a conversation that we hoped to have had last year, but the SEC had other ideas. Chad, how are you doing?
Well, if I'm thinking about last season, not too well, but overall, doing pretty well nonetheless.
Hey, you accomplished something last season that we at Georgia did not. You did get the win over Alabama, so you can hang your hat on that at least.
I would. I'll trade that with you, though. How about that? All the other things that happened to us.
I don't know. I was in the Superdome in January. Not a pleasant experience.
Oh well. I was a big Ohio State or Georgia fan for a couple games there when y'all played Texas and then played them again. You know, huge.
Sorry, I got a phone call in the middle of that and
good.
tried to hang up so I can keep watching the Braves game, and it didn't work too well. So let's go ahead and get into it because this is an episode. So, Chad, I know you probably are not a listener of the podcast, being Georgia based and all, but so our Puncher's Chance series every year, it's one of our favorite things. Each one of us, there's three of the co-hosts, each one of us brings a couple of teams to the table that we think are going to improve between last season and this season. And Oklahoma was the first team that I had on my list. So this is my interview, this is my choice. And primarily because there's absolutely no way that the offense has that many injuries again.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's just physically not possible, right?
You hope. And again, it's and I'm sure we'll talk about Jackson Arnold in his season as well. He was certainly dealt a bad hand and didn't play it well. But yeah, I have had this belief for a while. And it's one of those things like, we're all conditioned as sports fans to not want to make quote unquote excuses and whatnot. And listen, there's plenty bad outside of even the injuries. They just didn't perform well. There was no execution, and we'll talk about that. But there's only so much a team can withstand when you are in the SEC your first year. I always bring this up. About a month or two before the season, Pro Football Focus had a article about the top 10 receiving corps, and Oklahoma's was like number 7 or 8. They had, just absolute dudes on the outside. NFL guys, Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, who's a top 10 receiver this year on Pro Football Focus, which admittedly I don't always use as a source, but it's helping my argument this time, so I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Feel that?
That's what we do too.
Yeah, it is what it is. But there was all of those guys coming back that had proven that had success the year before. Obviously, Nick Anderson caught the game winner against Texas. He had 10 touchdowns as a true freshman. Deion Burks was a standout at Purdue. He was an exciting player. And earlier this year, we were just talking about what we lost. And of the 5 guys, 1 through 5 on our depth chart at receiver, this was the total production last year. 307 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 total games played. So you go from having, how good would Ohio State have been if they don't have Jeremiah Smith, they don't have all their top 5 receivers, and now you're playing true freshmen that were supposed to just go on and get 1 or 2 looks a game, and now they're playing 65 snaps. We had a guy named Zion Reagans who was like a low 10-second guy, 100-meter dash. He's 5'9", 155 pounds. He was supposed to be a guy that, third and long or just third and whatever or whatever down. He just runs straight just to take the top off the defense. He just runs past everybody. He goes from that to playing 60 snaps a game. And so you're playing kids that just have not only no experience at the college level, but no experience at, Georgia, you guys have been the standard for the last, 5, 10 years or whatever it's been?
Not at wide receiver.
But I mean, just on defense though, like
Yeah.
the size of your defense, the cornerback. The SEC is just a bigger conference. I mean, they're just more physical. And so not only is Oklahoma going from Jaden Gibson, who was 6'6", was coming back off a great year. He tears the ACL preseason, doesn't play. Nick Anderson, 6'4", Angelo Anthony, 6'3". You go from that to not having a receiver over 6 foot after all of them get injured. And so you're tiny, you're inexperienced, and stop me. My wife tells me I have a tendency to soapbox and carry on. So interrupt me and stop me whenever. But just going to so you're dealing with the receiver issues, and then you deal with what the offensive line had. I always think of this stat, and I think it was when they were playing Georgia in the SEC championship game. Texas's offensive line had, I think, around 85 starts combined. That one offensive line unit. A lot of them had played since they were true freshmen, a few of them later on, but total they had that many starts together. And you look at Oklahoma, didn't have a consecutive starting offensive line until week 11 because of injuries. You had to play at one time 3 true freshmen when you're going up against Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard, and you're just like, at some point you don't have the bullet, you don't have the arrows, you're throwing something out there that just can't compete at that level. And I know that sounds excuse making to people. To me, it's like, I always use this example. Like if I call my boss and I'm like, hey, I'm late to work. I was getting gas an hour early and a shootout happened and 4 of my tires popped. I'm going to be late. Like, that's not an excuse. I mean, if you get there and your boss is like, don't make excuses, get here on time. It's like, dude, I mean, there's some things I just can't help.
Yeah.
If I'm missing 9, I think I had a tweet the other day where I circled everybody on our injury report that was a starter or had started, and it was every one of them. And it was 11 guys or 12 guys. It's just like, I mean, at some point, as much as I want to say we can do it, teams are too good to overcome some of that. And that is what makes me excited now moving forward to this next year. But that's kind of my take last year. And admittedly, I'm biased. I'm a little bit more of an optimist in things that don't concern myself personally, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, just a lot happened with just injury bug, and then the Jackson Arnold stuff was just, I think that having to deal with all that he dealt with, the people he worked with in the offseason, all getting hurt, not having any guy that he knows is a dude that can go do it. After Burks went down, I think it just got, for lack of a better phrase, got in his head a lot, and he started kind of just seeing the rush, seeing everyone fly around, and I think it just made him a little uneasy, and you saw that kind of matriculate throughout his whole performance in game a little bit, which was, I hated to see, but it is what it is.
I will say, as far as we and the listeners of our show go, we sledgehammered into everyone's head that would listen that Oklahoma's issue last year was 78+% injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, down 5 receivers, 3 running backs, 1 quarterback. Like, at that point, what you can't expect what you would normally expect. So nothing you just said sounds like excuses, because from week 1 last year, it was like, man, like, what would you expect Georgia to do if they were down that many players? Probably not have beaten Clemson in week 1. Like, what do you want?
When it's like you can handle 1 or 2 guys, that's just football, like you're going to get injuries. But like whenever it's literally, I mean, and people think I'm being hyperbolic when, like, you guys obviously follow the sport, but I'll talk to people that don't follow it and they're like, well, Chad, it could have been that. I'm like, no, legitimately, our 1 through 5 were gone. Your 6th best receiver is now your starter and your go-to, theoretically. And he shouldn't really
even got hit while the receivers were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackson Arnold got benched in the middle of the game against Tennessee for, if we're being honest, in my opinion, I don't think very much reason. So you were down to almost a second and third string only offense, and you can't have much expectations for that.
Right. They had brought in in the offseason, the offensive line had brought in Branson Hickman from SMU, who was one of the highest rated linemen in the portal, and we're really excited about him. He ends up hurting his ankle the first game and doesn't really play at all. They bring in Garen Hatchett from Washington, who was on that playoff team. Was one of their best linemen. He tears his bicep the second game, so he can't play anymore. And you're just like, I mean, you feel just, it's like nothing. It was almost one of those things. It was like its own form of miracle in a way. It's like, there's no way this could happen to somebody, but it's one of those things where it's just got to move forward. And I'm really excited for what they have coming in next year. I think in a way it's a blessing in disguise going into this year, because a lot of those guys are back and they had to get thrown in the fire. You got to grow up quickly. And some of those guys are already talking about the benefits of having to go through that.
Well, that sounds like a nice segue into what we're going into next. We had the offensive line coming in next, and with all of that, I mean, obviously the injury situation can't possibly get any worse next year, knock on wood. So, with that in mind, what sort of improvement do you expect from these guys on the offensive line who did sort of get thrown in the fire and now they are the guys?
Yeah, a lot of experience back. Again, it's all coming down. We're just going to assume healthier because no one can predict injury, and you can be made a fool whenever you make a prediction and injuries happen and whatever. But they're going to have Jacob Sexton's going to be a guy coming back. He was a 4-star in 2022, and he's played a little over 400 snaps, and he's played both left and right guard. But he's going to come back, and if he can stay healthy, he's been a guy that has that kind of, back whenever like Baker and them were playing in the 2017 year when they won the Joe Moore Award. They had a guy named Drew Samia, who was this bully, big guy, played for the Bills a long time, and he was just bully guy. We played Georgia in the bowl game. He was just a guy that wasn't afraid. And obviously Georgia has dogs, like guys everywhere. And it was a game, and so he reminds me of a guy like that. Behind him, if at tackle you have Michael Fasusi, who is a 5-star guy that they got in. I don't like playing true freshmen on offensive line, especially I didn't like in the Big 12. I like it even less whenever there's future first rounders everywhere. I just don't think it sets him up for success. But if he can come in and produce, then he can. And then Logan Howland probably behind him. But that'll probably be the left tackle position, Jacob Sexton, then probably Michael Fasusi. And at left guard, it's looking like it'll be Eddie Pierre-Louis. This guy, I don't know if you saw, and I don't know why you would have, but he went viral. He ran the 100-meter dash as an offensive. He was like 330 pounds and ran the 100-meter dash for his high school and like won a race. Now, granted, I don't know who he was racing against. It's not like he's running a 10 flat, but it was impressive to see a guy that big move like he can. And he's been a guy that we've been really excited about at Oklahoma because of his athleticism. He's a big guy, but it's looking like he is going to be the starter. He was able to preserve his red shirt last year, which was a big deal for us because it gives him that extra year if he needs it to either build or just gain in skill. His backup is Heath Ozada, and then we have a guy from the NFL Academy over in England, Daniel Akinkume, who I really like. He's super cool. I think he's just still a little raw. He just hadn't had the experience growing up and playing that the other guys have. At center, it's going to be looking like it's going to be a transfer from Stanford and Jake Mikula. He played 10 games last year for Stanford and had it was like 1,130 something snaps total in his career. So again, you're getting experience. It's a guy that Beanbo talked about knowing he had seen be able to diagnose pre-snap really well. And if he can just be healthy and be ready to go, it's going to be a big upgrade to what they were doing last year, where they were moving guards and tackles and whatever they could to fill that position. Troy Everett played really well there, but he's really a guard build, and it's looking like he's going to be the backup to Mikula at center as well this year. He's really center build. I'm sorry, he was having to play some guard because our guards got hurt. I reversed that, but so excited for that position group, and then. Right guard, Febechi Nwewu, he was our starter last year. Ryan Foje was another 5-star kid on some sites who's a high 4-star on the others, but is going to be a backup for him. And then at right tackle, we had an interesting transfer in from Western Carolina. His name was Derek Simmons, 6'7" guy, 6'8" guy, moves really well for his size. I don't know much about offensive line play. I did quarterback and just whatever little lessons I gave like younger kids was just quarterback based, and it was very, very basic. I don't know much about offensive line blocking or anything, but I know that good feet is a good start, and I like seeing guys that can move around and look athletic. Don't look like they're like little puppies have big paws for them, and when they flop their feet somewhere. That's kind of when I see linemen that don't have good feet on them. That's kind of what I think of. And this guy can move. He's got really good feet on him. He can get around linemen really well, and I'm excited about him. So. I think for overall, on paper at least, it's looking like they should be fairly solid on the offensive line.
So we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but the wide receiver situation is a little bit difficult to figure out as an outsider. 6 guys hit the transfer portal, including Nick Anderson, but a lot of guys that played last year are coming back. So what does that room look like going into the 2025 season?
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard about a lot of the drama. So there was some, and I don't know what's true and what's not. So I'm not gonna get too conspiratorial there. But there was some drama about what some players had injuries and they were uh, being really hesitant to do anything with the team doctors. They were going up north to Edmond. It's about an hour north of the city, or north of Norman, here in Oklahoma. It's north of Oklahoma City. And going to specialists there outside of the team, and they were taking some players with them, and it developed into this whole locker room bust and an issue for sure with the team. But they go out and they get some really, really interesting people, and I'm just trying to bring my notes up here so I can give you all their stats. The first one they got Arkansas Pine Bluff, a guy that I'm really excited about was a guy named Giovanni Gibson, and he is, for my money, there's already videos of him. He's doing backflips into the end zone. He's 6'4", big guy, built really well, can run. But like true to sadly true right now to Sooner fashion, it seems he had an injury earlier on in spring practice, so they were worried. They thought he would be like a guy that's going to miss a ton of time. It looks like he's going to be okay. He's going to be able to come back, with at least by the Michigan game. He's already walking in a boot. They thought he wouldn't be walking in a boot till around August or September. So it wasn't as bad as the first thought. Which, as an Oklahoma fan, I'm like, make the mistake that way. Don't do last year where it's like we think next week he's playing and then not one snap the whole season for some of these guys, and you're like, just tell me they're not going to be in, and then I'd rather be surprised and happy than just constantly disappointed. But he's going to be the X. A guy named Jermichael Carter. He was a portal lad. Is going to be the backup at that position, and Zion Kearney as well is going to be behind probably him at the third string. Again, Zion was a starter for us last year as a true freshman. He's very athletic, but again, it's one of those guys where he's a project really, and I don't mean that as pejorative, but just he needs some work and just refinement. But extremely athletic. At the Z, again, Giovanni Gibson, who had played when Dylan Gabriel was here, he had a really good season with him. Had really fixed a lot of his in 2022. He had some ball security issues, some catching issues as a true freshman. Had really fixed that his sophomore year, and then going into last year, I was so excited to see him play, and he ended up tearing his ACL before the season. Didn't get any time. He's going to be the Z and starter as well. I'm really excited for him. Was like a world class 200 sprinter. It was kind of cool to hear about. We were at an event with a few of the players, and it was when Nick Anderson and all them were there, and we had a guy, a receiver named Brennan Thompson, who's now going to Mississippi State, but he was a like 10-1, almost 9-second 100-meter guy, like legit, almost ran on the world team, World Juniors. But he was a transfer in from another school. I can't off the top of my head recall, but they had this debate about who was the fastest receiver, and Gibson was like, dude, it's really me on the 200. And they're like, we don't run 200s in football, dude. That doesn't count, He's like, I'm just saying, though, I'm pretty fast. They're like, it's not, whatever. Because he's so long-legged, it takes him a while to get going. But once he does, he's fast, man. But he'll be the starter at slot. Deion Burks is definitely going to be the guy. And hopefully he can continue to just improve on what he did last year. He looked really good when he was in there. And then he just, unfortunately, couldn't be very much. And Jacob Jordan, who OU fans are going to know, is going to be his backup. And then Isaiah Satanga, a guy that came in from the portal as well. But yeah, they've got people that they went out and got speed and experience, in my opinion, and they're relying on guys that have production and have done it either at a ridiculously high level and a lower level, like an Arkansas Pine Bluff situation, that they know can transfer with their athleticism, or a guy that's at least speed and that fits Arbuckle system and has experience in the SEC, which has been encouraging for me to say the least.
So, how big of a loss is Nick Anderson?
I won't lie to you. I think he's definitely, in my opinion, and there are OU fans that will disagree. I think he is legitimately an NFL guy and a good receiver. 6'4" and moving like he doesn't just fall out of a tree all the time, and it's hard to find him. I think there are some questions of. It got really bad there for a little bit with the fans, especially in terms of what was going on in the locker room and what he was trying to, how he was influencing other players, and how kind of his demeanor was affecting the team as a whole. And remember, his older brother was Rodney Anderson. It was the running back for OU that year that we played y'all in the bowl game in the Rose Bowl. Really good player. But he's always been he was a really good athlete. He has great hands, and to do what he did as a true freshman. That's not just normal, like even though he wasn't the main guy, he had 10 touchdowns. He had the big play against Texas. He wasn't afraid of the moment. And those kind of mental makeup things are the uncoachables, as you say, as you can call it, are they're there for him. And I think that he's definitely a loss. He's definitely a loss. He would certainly be a starter this year if he was here. I think any OU fan that disagrees is now assuming he plays and he's not doing there's not an injury issue. He would definitely have been a starter. So losing him obviously hurts. And I think any OU fan that's being objective would at least say that much.
Well, the good news for the rest of the SEC is Brian Kelly is one of the better coaches in the country in dealing with player attitudes and locker room issues. So we
That's right,
are
yeah.
all very concerned.
Right. Yeah. That's one thing he's at least known for is his ability to, really lock that down.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, he's almost Mitch Hedberg level of one-liners. But when it comes to locker rooms,
Yeah.
a little rough.
Guys got his
Yeah.
exactly.
Brian Kelly, the locker room control guy. That's what we all call him.
Yeah.
So the running back room is also hit with the transfer bug. With Gavin Sawchuk taking off. Caleb Hicks went down to that other school in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Is it Caleb or Khalib? I've never known. My name's Caleb.
Khalib
so I
Hicks.
biased.
Yeah.
It's
Khalib,
Khalib.
yeah.
My bad,
Yeah.
Khalib Hicks,
No,
if
you're
you're
good.
listening.
Well, no, Caleb
No,
Hicks. I've
no
heard they say
disrespect
both.
him. He
They
went
say
to
it both
Oklahoma
ways.
State.
To be fair.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He went.
Caleb
Anyway,
Hicks.
so-
I think it is Caleb Hicks. I've heard Caleb and Khalib. Even like the reporters that do the press conferences. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, you're fine.
Gotcha. It's okay. It's a very important point to talk about a guy who's no longer on the roster to get his name right. So, among the guys who are there in that running back room, who do you expect to stand out this season and kind of break out as the number one guy?
Jade Knott for sure.
Yeah,
will be the guy. Yeah. But it's interesting because Xavier Robinson really. I don't even know how to put. He was so impressive when he came in. He ran so well against Alabama. He had such a good mindset on the season. He was actually on the practice squad, doing the scout team reps, and was really
We're
liking
getting
it.
a Stetson Bennett story here.
Yeah, I mean seriously, and he was doing really well. Really, and against the one thing Oklahoma had last year, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. Our defense was legit, and it just
Yes.
didn't get it didn't get to show it as much because you're getting. I mean, look at South Carolina. You're down 21-0 in 4 minutes, but I don't want to get sidetracked on it. But he's having to run against teams that in the scout team against the defense is pretty good, and he's tearing it up. And they move him up after the Sawchuk gets injured again. And he's finally the first running back I thought that really understood, that had good vision, that could really read the progression of blocking and read holes really well. Jason Tatum is another guy that was a number one running back in the country 2 years ago out of high school. Played last year some as a true freshman. He's also a baseball player though, and he's the guy that when you see him run, it's clear he's just a different level athlete. He has just a jitteriness, a quickness, and a speed to him that's different. Really struggled with the ball security. I think it was just a strength issue. He's just smaller, and he needed more time in the weight room to be able to take hits going up the middle. And there were some where he was covering the ball, it just literally they would hit his arm and it would just pop out for whatever reason. But he's a guy I'm really excited about. But for sure, Jay Knott, if he can stay healthy, he's someone that'll be at least on paper and potentially up for awards next year in terms of national recognition, especially the way that he can catch out of the backfield. California utilized him a lot before his injuries and the stuff he struggled with out of the pass game. Reminds me we had an old running back named Damian Williams that my friend, one of our friends and a good reporter Jay brought up. And that's a great comparison. Reminds me also of a Joe Mixon. He's not as talented or not as explosive, but Joe Mixon, one thing people forget about him is he had fantastic hands out of the backfield. He would make one-handed catches. He would jump ball with cornerbacks and snag on. I mean, he was unbelievable at catching.
And his balance was insane.
Right. And you see some of those things with Jay Knott's film. Now, granted, he hadn't done it against a Georgia defense or a Texas defense or ones that are that fast, so it's not going to look as different level as he has at California. But he's definitely a guy that brings another element that OU just hasn't had the last couple of years at running back.
Are you trying to tell me that football in California is different than football in the Southeast?
Hey,
at game day last year, Cal did claim to be communist.
Well, that's that'll hurt your football. That doesn't help you at all either.
Especially now that there's revenue sharing. Like, how are you going to revenue share with 15,000 students? Come on now.
Yeah. You're 100% right.
All right, so tight end room. So the coaching staff hit the portal back a little bit when it came to the tight end room. Got 3 out of the portal this season. Um, so which tight ends are you most excited to see going into 2025?
Man, tight end has been so. It's a triggering word to use a California phrase for a lot of OU fans. And people get mad when I do this on for Oklahoma fans do. I'd stick up for about what Bauer Sharp had to go through last year. He was not supposed to be this is the option guy on offense. He was supposed to be a solid piece that you could go to when you needed it. He was a good athlete. He was put in a position where he was like the only guy that could move forward athletically at some points because again, like they were just so small on the outside, and it's not even they were true freshmen. They were 17 years old, some of them, and they just weren't big enough to get off the line at times. And so Bauer Sharp was really the only weapon you had, and he was put under a microscope that probably wasn't fair to him to be put under, especially considering what he was brought there to actually do. And the Sooner fans just had it out for him. He really struggled in some games through the whatever that play was against LSU for the interception. Like just threw it up on a trick play, and I'm like, you're not helping your case. I mean, we can't do that. But you get you got a guy from Kennesaw State, and Carson Kent, and looks like another good athlete, 6'4", 240. It really depends on how Arbuckle really likes to use their tight ends. In my opinion, really good offensive coordinators, at least in the last few years, what separates them is their ability to use tight end position or slot positions and get mismatches. Lincoln Riley was great at that. Sark, when he was at Alabama, really developed that too when Tua was there. You see him do it now a ton whenever Gunnar Helm was there. It's gonna be interesting to see how they replace that tight end with when Quinn Ewers was there. The crossing routes, getting mismatches, getting one-on-ones in the red zone are huge. And for me, a guy like Kent, I think, is going to be, although he's not a standout, I just think in what he fits Arbuckle system doing is a guy that I look for. There's another one too, Caden Helms, a great athlete out of high school. He's been hit by the injury bug too, and I'm really hoping that he can be healthy because I think he's a guy that has the athleticism to really, really make a huge impact if he can get out there consistently.
I will say on this podcast we are big Kennesaw State respecters.
Yes.
So the interim coach last season, I was actually friends with him in high school. So doubled the amount of amount of D1 wins they had last season. We're actually trying to get him on the show here in a couple weeks, but he's now coaching at West Point. So, who knows? But big owl respecters around here.
Absolutely.
But you also got Will Huggins just to finish out, and then an interesting point, and he's just huge. I mean, he's 6'6", 265-ish. Played Division II though, so again, all this is how does it transfer? And I guess you just got to assume that the coaches do a good enough job of scouting out talent and projecting that they're not going to get a guy in here that they don't think can produce. So he's probably the guy that most people will say be the starter. And also, Jaron Kanik moved to tight end. He was a former linebacker for us last year. Was a huge recruit has one of the most insane highlight films ever. Like he played quarterback at I don't know if it's a smaller high school, and he literally just ran over everybody. It was hilarious. It looked like you see those Saturday Night Live skits where it's like a man against little kid boys and flag football just running over people. It was like that for an hour on his highlight. It was hilarious. But he moved to tight end. He had struggled a little bit at linebacker, and I think just with how thin we were, he's another really good athlete that is gonna hopefully. It'd be cool to see him have some success there too.
Well, speaking as well of transfers, the quarterback position obviously saw a pretty big change. Got John Materin from Wazoo to take over. So I guess before we get into that, I know we touched on it briefly, but what are your thoughts on how the quarterback situation played out in last season in 24?
Yeah, again, I have a problem with just not being able to qualify, I guess, because it's hard for me to say good or bad. It's like you were saying at some point, it's like what you're dealt with such a terrible hand that it's like you're trying to figure out how to fly a plane while it's taking off, and you just can't. So not good. It wasn't good, obviously. Now, he was dealt a bad hand and he played it badly. I will say, like there are some things that you just don't do in terms of like the Missouri turnover at the end of the game. There are things that he did. I think that he thought he was trying to make plays when there was no reason to do some of the stuff he was doing. But they had such a problem with just running an offense that I just think even if Jackson Arnold were back, if there's just people in front of him that are competent both physically and because of their developed or just have enough ability, he'd be fine too. But Michael Hawkins came in. It was fun for a couple games. He came in against Tennessee and added an element that Jackson didn't have with his running and completed some passes as well. It was fun at Auburn when he had the long run, but then you don't score again until the kick six, and as we call it. But they couldn't find anybody that could really produce consistently for them. And again, I just don't know. There was it was hard for them to get a run game, which helps any quarterback. And it's hard to get an outside run game because your receivers aren't blocking because they're not big. They're not big enough really to block anybody out there. And so it was just hard for me to say like, oh, it was bad because he's just bad. It was bad because the offense it was just bad at every position because of inexperience and for what they lost. But obviously now you get Mateer in, and with what we have coming back and what we have through the portal and offensive line is just another level of excitement for OU fans. I don't know. Do you want me to just move on to that? Sorry, I kind of or did I answer that question at all? But
yeah, you can go ahead and talk about this year too, what the expectations are.
Yeah, sure. Hi, people are pretty excited. I am someone that someone as consistent as Ben Arbuckle at the OC has been developing quarterbacks. That doesn't happen by just luck. You don't just luck into having a guy that has the numbers that Bailey Zappi did, and then obviously the success that Cam Ward did, and then what John Mateer did last year. I used to have a stat where he was one of the only guys to have like 40 touchdowns, 15 rushing. He's one of 14 to do it with like a 90 something QB rating, and the other 13 were Heisman Trophy winners. I mean, it's like
Wow.
he had a season last year that was just insane. Now you say that and people are like, it's Washington State. It's like, yeah, I get that, and fair enough. But also, I just saw Paul Feinbaum say Arch Manning's the best quarterback since Tim Tebow, and he's played 1-2 teams.
Yeah.
We know Oklahoma hadn't been in the SEC for too long, but Paul Feinbaum is on the level of like gas station or truck stop stall Sharpie writing.
Okay, fair.
Like the man has picked Alabama to win the SEC every year for like the last 15. With like no thought, just Bama because I'm more right than wrong.
Yeah.
You know what was so funny, and I'll get back to the material. I'm sorry, I got to mention this to y'all because y'all love it. I was watching an argument between Georgia fans on Twitter, reading, and it was about arguing national championships won, and I'm like, imagine this kind of debate where you get to argue about the national championships you've won the last X amount of years. We won 2 in a row. It's like we haven't won one since 2000. I can't even fathom it. It's been crazy. But no, back to Mateer. He's got everybody really excited because and we've heard some players talk about this, and we interviewed earlier on our Sooner Smith show that he had mentioned last year when they were playing, and it was funny. He was trying to be respectful as he could, and finally he just broke. And he's like, last year in practice, the defense, the offense kind of struggled. He was like, I won't lie, man, we were cooking them. he was like, bro, they couldn't do anything. It was bad, man. It was bad. But he's like, this year, man, he's just different. He's got, like you see a guy that's just a dude and they have an aura about him, and it brings confidence to your whole team when they see your quarterback is a guy, like he's a guy that you can really trust to get the ball in his hands, and he's not going to be afraid of the moment, and he can go out and make plays for you. And you really hear that consistently throughout everyone that's kind of met Mateer or talked with him. And I really like him just as a on a side note, just as a person. We were at a softball game. We were lucky enough to get some pretty good seats there, and John Mateer was sitting adjacent to us on the other side. And there's this guy like in a hunter's cap, hunter's gear, just talking, and he's with his son, and John Mateer's just talking to him the whole entire game, just a random guy, and takes a picture with him, and they just chop it up for 4 or 5 innings of a softball game, and it's like it was really cool to see. He doesn't have a I'm better than everybody arrogance to him. He's got a really good just head on his shoulders, it seems, and he's endeared himself to everyone on the team, obviously, and a lot of the Oklahoma fans. And then you look at his ability. I've been trying to say with the TOU fans, he does have at times too much belief in his arm. I mean, there's some throws he tries to make where he's like falling down, trying to throw like a 20-yard out route, and it's intercepted. And I'm like, let's not do that. Just take the sack and we'll punt it. Please. If there's one thing Oklahoma had last year, was probably the best punter in the country. Now he got a lot of work. He got a lot of practice and game reps. So
You're
it's maybe
sounding
not
like an
fair to
Iowa
compare.
fan right now. I'm a little concerned.
Dude, you know what's crazy? There was a time like Alabama. I'm like, if we don't get a pick six, they might come back and win it. And we got a pick six. And I'm like, I feel like Iowa did. Like when they had what's his name for the Eagles? Oh gosh,
DeJean.
DeJean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like if he doesn't return a punt or a touch pick six, we might not get points up. Yeah. So it did feel like Iowa for a while there. But no, super excited. And I want to just point out and sorry to be so long winded here, but OU fans really have a respect for Michael Hawkins and what he's doing. He was a highly, highly recruited player. Obviously comes in, has success against Auburn, has success when he first comes in against Tennessee. Ends up getting the spot taken again at South Carolina after that start to a game that was just Did y'all watch that or see that at all? Did you hear about it? I'm sure it had to make rumblings up in Georgia.
I read about it and I
Yeah.
looked at the box score.
Okay, so
I
me
watched
just-
some highlights, so Yeah.
let me set the scene, right? So we're lucky enough to have season tickets. And so my wife and I are there, and my father is there with my mother. And we're like, my dad's going, hey, if we can get this going. My dad coached 30 years defensive coordinator at every level but the NFL. Coached OU in the 90s, and just kind of really knows a ton about the game. And he's like, he was always saying how good our defense was. He's like, if we can just put them in good positions where they actually have passing downs, you got to make them throw the ball instead of just run clock the whole time. Imagine how good their pass rush would be and all that. And no joke, first play of the game, or maybe not first play, first third down of the game. And it, as true freshmen can do, because they're so used to being better mostly than everyone they play, and their arms are so good, and they're playing high school kids, it's still hard to get out of that habit. He throws a late out route that's intercepted, like the third play of the game. They score. The next play is like a fumble. The next play is a fumble that they pick up and score. And then they get back on the third. This is like 4 minutes into the game. On the third third time the offense goes out there, he throws another like pick. I believe it was a pick six.
Yeah.
And we're down 21-0, and it's like I haven't even eaten my hot dog yet. And I'm like, I don't even want to be here anymore. Like, so it was. But he goes through all that. And instead of going to the transfer portal, which you see so commonly now, and he could go somewhere and start. If he could go to Oklahoma State probably and start and make more money because he'd be the starter there. He said, you know what? No, I'm going to stay here. I want to develop. I want to learn from Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer and these guys, and I want to be the quarterback at Oklahoma. And whether or not that pans out for him and works out like he hopes, I don't know. All I know is I'm rooting for him. I'm hoping it does, because I respect people that are taking that mindset and that approach to it, especially in the NIL era and portal era.
Yeah, and that's as Georgia fans, we do appreciate that because, I mean, Carson did it, Gunner
Mhm.
did
Yeah.
it. Like having a guy that's willing to actually sit and learn, and going back to even the 2022 season or 2021 season, it was when JT Daniels got hurt. Carson was told he was going to start, and then he didn't, because he went around telling everybody he was going to start, and it got to the media, and then they put Stetson in the game. And as much as I am not a fan of Carson at this very moment, because of everything that's happened in between, the fact that he was like, you know what, coach is right, I'm going to sit it out. And, to his credit, he was the quarterback for the winning play of the SEC title game. Like, in modern football, you have to appreciate the guy that stays.
Yes, 100%.
So we are going to move on to the better side of the team from last season, the defense. And this is something that we talked about a lot going through the 2024 season. But they lost some all-time guys from the 2024 defense. And I know Oklahoma has a history of phenomenal defenders, but the guys that, like Danny Stutzman and those type of guys, how much did they mean in a season where the offense was down and the leadership wasn't necessarily there, talking about the wide receiver room and running backs at times?
Well, I think as much as you could say about the issues with wide receiver and the leadership issues they had there, it's the opposite end of the spectrum for defense. Danny was, I mean, the quintessential dream linebacker you could have. Obviously, really good, very experienced. But his mindset, he was a guy that I bring up the South Carolina game again. He was still just so fiery after they were down as much because he was like, look, we have a standard on defense. I don't care how much we're down or who we're playing. We play to that standard. He bought into it deeply. And I can only be thankful for it because you hear a guy like Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, who's probably going to be our other starting linebacker, talk about the impact that had on them. And I'm sure Kirby Smart talks about it, right? It's there's that video that goes viral every year where he's like yelling at some guy for his shirt not being tucked in and yelling at like just the little things, right? And Saban had talked about a story where Julio Jones was coming back in an offseason workout and that there was a receiver running drills and he had dropped a couple passes and had stepped out or something and it was getting mad at his quarterback for throwing it too far. And he's like, man, hit your hands. He's like, you don't complain here at Alabama. You're like, not to bring up Alabama on a Georgia podcast, but just for the lesson. I'm sure Georgia does it. Has the same stories. I just haven't heard them, but like believing in the standard, no matter where you're at or what game you're playing in, you don't just give up. You still play to the best that you can. And I truly think, and it's unfair as this is to say for some other team, I really think Oklahoma's defense is one of the better ones in the country and can make a case for being as good as any defense in the country coming into next year for sure. We are losing, obviously, Billy Bowman, who is having some great reviews right now at the Saints, or at the Danny Sutsman's at the Saints. Billy Bowman is, I can't think
Falcons,
of the team now.
right?
Falcons, yeah, it is Falcons. Yeah, I was going to say Falcons, but I wasn't sure. There's some good reports out of him right now in his going through camp, and losing him they're obviously hard to replace. I will say of the positions where I am confident that we have guys at least as at linebacker and at safety, where I am more worried is the cornerback position. And it's such a Jekyll and Hyde thing right now at Oklahoma because we have a guy named Gentry Williams who was for the first time in a while the first legit NFL talent and body that we've seen. He was the guy that got the interception against Texas that year we beat them, like the second play of the game. He caused the fumble on the hit later in the game against Quinn Ewers. He's an elite level player, but he has a glass shoulder, and I hate it for him. He's struggled with it for a while, and last year he missed the whole season because of his shoulder. He would pop out and he couldn't get it back. And from what I hear, again, I'm probably falling into the same trap as I always do, is that he's supposed to be good to go. But you pair him up with Eli Bowen on the other side, who was, for all intents and purposes, the best true freshman cornerback in the country when he came in. He had the interception against Alabama. You look at his stats, and he's like a 5'10" guy. He's Peyton Bowen's, the safety's younger brother. Was a true freshman last year. He had one of the best red zone jump ball passer block breakups of any cornerback in the country. One-on-one coverage, one of the highest rated passer block or defensive ratings in the country. Literally everything we thought as a true freshman he would be bad at, he was fantastic at. One of the best open field tacklers in the country when you look at statistics. It was insane. And so it's like for the first time Oklahoma could legit have lockdown corners, and I haven't got to the best part of the defense yet finally, but again, it depends on health. And they have guys there that have experience now because of last season getting reps, Jacoby Johnson, a couple other guys that are going to be, again, very good players. But I'm excited about the Gentry Williams and its name maybe to keep an eye out for. And then defensive line. So we are missing some guys next year in terms of the overall defense, but we have 8 of our top 10 tacklers back, and 4 of those guys are on the defensive line. Jaden Jackson was a true freshman All-American, first team All-SEC true freshman from IMG Academy with David Stone, who was the big 5-star guy that needed probably another year to develop. He was a wall. I think they averaged let me see if I can find it here, but they averaged one of the highest rated defensive. They only averaged less than 3 yards a carry. And again, this is like on a defense that is having the ball ran on them a lot because they're down a lot. You know what I mean? Like the teams aren't really trying to worry about scoring a lot when they were playing Oklahoma last year, sadly. So they average just 3.1 yards per carry and less than a touchdown rushing per game on the season, which is, really good when you consider all teams did on them basically was run. There's a Grayson Halton is another lineman. He's a number 10 interior defensive defender in the country on Max Chadwick's Pro Football Focus list. 13% pressure rate. And I have this written. I wish I could do this from memory, but I'm not that kind of guy. But 13% pressure rate since 2023, leads all FBS defensive tackles, and his 12.5% rush rate is best among returning Power 4 conferences. And then R. Mason Thomas is probably our most prolific big name that's coming back. He's our defensive end. He has, and this is where I just talked about earlier, getting offenses into passing downs. He has a 93.2 pass rate against. It's second in all of football, all of Division I football on true passing sets. So like when he knows they're passing, he's pretty good. It's just it was hard to get teams to have passed the ball last year, really. But they've got a lot of good players coming back. They got some really good pickups in the portal. Marvin Jones Jr., who's been a guy that's gone to a couple different teams, was a 5-star kid out of high school. I'm not a big believer.
We're familiar with him.
Yeah, we're very
there you
familiar.
go.
He's still on a couple billboards in Augusta in
I
his
was about to
Georgia
say.
uniform.
Hey, he
I was
still
about to say.
has billboards in Savannah too.
I was about to say you probably know him a little bit, right? And I was gonna say I was like I'm not gonna mention it, but it helps my argument, I guess, to say he was a highly recruited player, former Georgia trained, so that helps me even more. But I think just as a guy that can give you something at the backup position for behind R. Mason Thomas, at least to athletic guy, I hope that he can provide some help there. It's something that we struggled with a little bit, especially with Ethan Downs leaving. On the other side is a guy named Adepujo Adebore, PJ Adebore, as he goes by, as he's called, but he's a guy I'm really excited about. He was a big 5-star plus kid, but has an ankle issue that's just bugged him for a while. And then a Danny Okoye kid is another one that's going to be there that we're really excited about. He comes from a smaller school in Oklahoma, but is a really, really good player and someone that I think can have a really big breakout year, especially if R. Mason and Marvin Jones are able to give some consistency on the other side.
All right. Well, you pretty much covered every question we had about the defense in one go, which I appreciate. That was incredibly informative. No, don't be sorry at all. That was very informative.
It's awesome. You can tell that you are a defensive coach's son. For
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I can tell you love the game too, which I appreciate.
You guys will respect this. I remember just saying, and I said it. I started to have this opinion after the Georgia game. I'm just like, we're never gonna have. Technically, I guess Kyler's offense was better, but I was like, we're never gonna have an offense that good again. And if we couldn't win it that year, we got to change something. I'm just like, I know, I like Lincoln scoring points. I just never thought that was gonna win you. I never
doesn't ever have a good defense.
Never. Yeah,
What?
right.
No.
Right. I was like, I'm sorry. Guys, I'd like to win championships, and for whatever reason, you ain't gonna do it if you can't stop people from scoring, because it's really hard to just rely on your offense to score every time.
I just want to know what sort of information that, and I can't think of his name right now, the guy that was Lincoln Riley's defensive coordinator for the better part of a decade.
Alex Grinch?
Yes. What information did he have on Lincoln
to keep that
job?
And
Lincoln. Secondly, what did Lincoln do to the athletic directors he'd worked for to keep his job after he posted that picture of his brisket on the internet?
Yes.
Because that immediately fireable offense. Like I would vote for firing Kirby Smart if he bragged about that brisket. Like that,
as you should, yeah.
Disgrace.
Oh man. That's why he's not in the Southeastern Conference and ran away from it, by the way.
He ran.
He did. No, he did.
He
did. He 100% did. And I just, man, he is, obviously as a person, I have nothing against him. But as a coach, it's like, I don't know. I just don't see that style of football winning championships. I just see that when I've seen good teams win, it's been the Georgias, the Bamas, the year that LSU was damn good on defense. The year they had Joe Burrow, that's overlooked as how good that
2019 LSU team. They didn't have to be 2021 Georgia level of defense,
right? Yeah,
because you're scoring 40 to 60 points a game.
Yeah.
They still had a good defense.
But they did. They had some dudes, man, that could play. And so. Being able, so I really believe that just defense, and it's why I was excited by the BV hire. And admittedly, I'm probably more biased and supportive of him and apologetic to an extent, maybe to a harmful point, I guess, at some point for Oklahoma football. But I just want him to succeed so badly because he really does love the university. He really does love the players that he coaches, and it just kind of hits you when you hear him talk and hear him how passionate he is. And I'm excited to see this defense get going with an offense that can at least give him something on the other side.
So going into this season, just moving on to broad strokes at this point, What do you think is the fair expectation for this team this season?
You know what? It's crazy. They have a like 11 win roster skill level that could easily go 7-5 because of how hard their schedule is. You know, I've said that, man. I think 8-4 is the floor that you could have, and it depends on what those 4 losses to who they are and how they look. If they look like South Carolina, all 4, you're probably not going to see BV in 2026. If they're teams that are, if you lose to Texas in a close one, you lose to Michigan early in the year, maybe if they end up being good or something. I think they can get to 9-3. I think 9-3 is a I'm pretty confident in that. I think they can get to 10 wins because also a lot of teams are replacing quarterbacks and key players as well. That there's not a lot of teams that have returning starters at those positions. There's LSU and South Carolina really, but even like Georgia we're going to replace Beck. Now I think is it going to be Stockton for Georgia?
It looks like he's the guy. Yeah.
Unless the BYU goes to Athens, because
true.
we do not frown on premarital sex in Athens.
In fact, based on the last 2 starting quarterbacks we've had, it might be a requirement.
Yeah, there's just with how hard the schedule is. But I think there could be a 10-win team for sure. And 9-3, I'm pretty confident in is my expectation for them.
Well, so that answered our next question, which is over under 6.5. You told me that I need to bet the house on the over.
I bet over, yeah.
So
whole mortgage
I will be
going
doing
on it
that
right now.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll be doing that. And you kind of answered the next question as well, as just kind of where is Brent Venables' job security at? You said that you're on the positive side of it. But important question here. How much leeway would a win against Texas get him?
It would be huge. It would give him a lot. I think that even OU fans don't understand and it's weird to say, it's kind of oxymoronic to say that, but in terms of what it does for donors and for the money, which does matter nowadays a lot, the Texas game is huge. And I didn't appreciate it until I was lucky enough, and I'm sure you guys have people that are big and involved in the team just with hosting your show. Like you get some people that reach out, and then we've gotten to meet, my wife and I have gotten to meet a couple people that are pretty involved with the university and especially OU football on the donor side. And they have talked about just how big that game is to win it. And you saw it a lot with Mike Gundy in a different way. Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, he could have bad years, but if they somehow squeezed out a win against Oklahoma, as rare as it was, it would be, it would fix a lot for him. And it's the same for Oklahoma. If BV can win at Texas, win the Texas game, it's just, it really just, I think it takes 2 losses. It kind of makes them a wash later on. If I can just put math to it. Obviously you still want to have a good season. You can't go, can't win only 6 games and just rely on the Texas win. But if you go 8-4 and one of those 8 are Texas, he's fine. If you go 7-5 and one of them are Texas and the other losses are close ones against teams that are really good and probably most going to be in the playoff, then I think you could see a year where it's like, hey, let's not do the buyout. Let's just have one more season where you're getting another year of development and whatnot. But yeah, the Texas game is huge.
All right, well, that does it for everything we kind of had questions about. Is there anything you'd like to plug before you get out of here?
Sure, and I had a couple questions for y'all if y'all don't mind.
Sure. Oh, of course, go for it.
And these are just fun questions I've always wanted to ask people who know a lot about Georgia. And I hate this is going to be painful to ask. Tell me what it was like watching the Rose Bowl and seeing y'all win that game.
That is a top 3 memory for me.
We actually just did our top 25 moments of the past 25 years, like a quarter century thing. We put it out on Sunday, and I think that was number 3 of the past 25 years.
Wow. Yeah. Man, that was just, I was so worried about our offense because I knew our offense was good, but I was like, man, we haven't played a defense that's like has what y'all had everywhere. And when they came out and we're just, we had like 31 in the half, and I was like, dude, we're like,
the first half y'all dog walked us.
Yeah,
that was
pretty
embarrassing.
Hand up. I watch first half highlights all the time, and I'm like, we're just gonna call it. I'm not gonna watch the second half. I don't want to see.
That's great because I only watched I'll take that back. I watched the 55-yard field goal and then the second half.
Oh gosh.
Still to this day, I have a difficult time going back and watching the entire game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
You just
so
yeah.
I talked about it when we recorded the other day, the 25 moments, is I spent New Year's in Orlando and drove from Orlando to Athens and like paused the TV, the kickoff, and watched the first half and like fast forward to
Oh
catch up
wow.
to the game, like skipping all the commercials, skipping halftime, skipping all that.
That's got to be the best Georgia fan experience of that game, to be honest with
Yeah.
you, if you're
It was
watching it
still
live.
painful.
Well, yeah.
And at the time I was working construction, so I had to be up at 4 o'clock the next morning and
Oh
drive
gosh.
across the state.
Mm.
So when I like after the game, me and my friend that I was hanging out with, we took a bunch of shots, and then I was like, I have to be up in 3 hours. I need to be asleep so long ago.
All right, now I brought up a good memory from that year.
Yes.
What about the next game? Whenever we see,
What
was that
next
the game
game?
Tua came in? The
Yeah,
championship
that was
game.
yeah.
Devontae
I
Smith.
don't understand.
The
That
first
was
of
the Rose
oh
Bowl was the end of the
yeah,
season.
the Rose
yeah.
Bowl was the
Fair,
finale.
fair. I
Now,
can't
I
believe
will
that
say
happened. That was
that
just wild.
the first of 2 years in a row where Alabama said we're going to put our backup quarterback in and beat you in the second half, which
And they
now
were
that
both the same quarterbacks.
yes, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I remember when we got that sack on first down to make it 2nd and 26. I was like, well, that's a wash. They're not kicking a field goal from here, and this defense is too good. Nope, give it away the next play. It was the whole thing. The only solace I have now from that moment is the fact that we basically just did that to Texas in the SEC championship game,
Yeah.
and
Well, another point of solace is the quarterback and wide receiver that made that play possible. One
Mhm.
was a Heisman finalist, and one was the first non-quarterback or running back Heisman winner since 1998. So,
Yeah.
like,
Fair. Yeah.
obviously something special there.
and
It
on
doesn't
all
make me feel
three
good, but better.
and all
Well,
three of the
yeah.
guys involved, the two quarterbacks and Devontae Smith, are all very much locked in the NFL right now. So
Yeah. Uh,
so they're-
last kind of question for me, and sorry to ask you questions on your own show here,
Oh, you're
but
good.
I've always wondered. I've always said my quote greatest team ever, if I just had to do units, would be 2019 LSU offense and then 2021 Georgia defense.
fair.
As a
Yeah.
Georgia fan, who do y'all think? It's like y'all know the team way better than I in the program, way better than I ever will, but would. Who's the best Is that? Do Georgia fans think that's the best Georgia defense? What is y'all's in the Kirby Smart era, or
Georgia
what's the
fans
debate?
basically think that 21 defense is the best college football defense of all time and arguably the best single unit of all
It's
time.
yeah, it's got to be.
Like,
So
it is
it's
the 85 Bears of college football.
Yeah, dude, what y'all
yeah.
did? That's the TCU year.
No,
No, the next year,
2022 was
2022.
TCU.
Oh,
TCU.
20, that's right. Yeah.
Which
Now,
is,
if
we
you-
lost a lot of people, but we also still had Jalen Carter and we added
Yeah.
Malachi Starks. So
Like,
that one
Jalen Carter's
is
pretty
up
good.
there too.
I was about to say, if
He can
you
play.
put Jalen Carter in that 2021 defense, I'm not sure God himself could convince me that's not the greatest defense ever constructed in the history of college football.
Yeah. He
my
got
money, it
snaps
is,
too,
yes.
but yeah, like the fact that Jalen Carter at one point was not a starter and was not a starter on that great defense just shows you how loaded that defense
Right.
was.
The man that picked up Jaden Daniels instead of sacking him was not good enough to start the year before.
Oh wow. Y'all enjoy this. We had a call-in show for the first time, and a guy calls in who's an Ohio State fan, and he goes,
Oh,
he
boo.
gave us great advice. I don't know if y'all knew this, but this is what he told. He was a sweet guy too. I don't mean to disparage him at all, but it was apparently Georgia is going to have a good defense again. Apparently, y'all got athletes there. We were bringing up just some teams, and he goes, "Don't forget Georgia is out there, and they got good players." And I'm like, I one thing I didn't think about was Georgia not having good players.
Yeah.
So I get it. If there's some big fits and consistent, it's Georgia being good. So
I am pessimistic. You said earlier you were the optimist. I am pessimistic. And we did like our post spring top 10. I had Georgia the lowest. I'm not 100% sold on Gunnar Stockton. I don't like the offensive line. I'm not convinced about the defensive line given last season. The corners I'm very worried about. Dalen Everett, if you're
play
wearing
Texas.
burnt orange, Dalen
Yeah.
Everett
I'm big
is
dog
the
fan,
best
that guy.
player in America.
Mhm.
If you're not wearing burnt orange, he gets burnt. And that just is what it. I also have season tickets, and the people in my section, if they heard me go, guess who, would yell Dalen Everett because of last season.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
that's what it makes our dynamic work though, because I'm sky high on Hopium for this season.
Okay.
I've got this team going all the way, but I am an optimist eternally.
It's
I'm
got to
not.
be fun though, just to have like truly know you got the dudes there to do it. Because I'm pretty high on Oklahoma, but it's also like, man, it's I don't know, I haven't seen it really, so what do I know? But it's just, I'm excited. There seems to be for the first time, there's not this may sound crazy after the season plays out, but it doesn't seem like there's a unit or a team that's just head and shoulders this year. Like has the guys, has everybody going into it. And maybe because like the quarterback position for so many teams is changing up. South Carolina to me, I think is going to be another team that's really good. They're playing really well to end the season last year, as well as anybody. If they didn't have the like horrid start of the season they had to start out, who knows how that would have worked out for them. But yeah. That's kind of, I was just curious. I've always wanted to ask Georgia, people who know Georgia, those questions, and I've just been curious. So it's good to know the 2021 off defense was the one that a lot of people think even in Georgia was the best. For my money, that's what I always say too.
And to send you off with a little bit of hopium extra, I personally believe, and this is something that I think Caleb shares a thought with me as well. Last year's Texas defense wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the stats they put up against the teams that made the playoff last season, which they played 4 of, Texas or Georgia was 2 of them, that defense sucked, and they're losing most of their good players.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you have some undersized defensive linemen that you put at defensive tackle last year. Okay, you're losing your safety that. If the SEC officials were fair and competent, would have left almost every game with a targeting penalty in the first half. Congratulations, you went from a super easy schedule with a mid defense that took advantage of it to a less than mid defense with a much more difficult schedule and an inexperienced quarterback. Like I would be shocked if Texas won and went to the playoff this year.
Yeah. I think of any year, I think if you're a Texas fan, last year you had to really think hope was your year, and with Quinn Ewers coming back and all they had on the offensive side, and for them not to get it done, that would sting me pretty hard. But I hope it's nothing against me. I like seeing Texas struggle, so it's good to see.
All right, so one last question for you, as someone who I'm assuming has as much hater in you for the UTs and Orange in the SEC as we do.
Yeah.
Who is back first, Texas or Tennessee? Because in my opinion, neither are yet.
Man, probably Texas.
How painful was that to say, though?
It's painful, but I have to just be objective about it. They have invested so much in NIL and money, and being able to utilize that now is huge.
The amount Ohio State spent last year.
Yes, yeah, and the problem is
allegedly $42 million.
Yeah, and the thing is they have rows of donors wanting to get in to give money to them. I mean, they just got, again, like I've mentioned the couple of guys we know. I mean, it's 20 to 1, 50 to 1 in terms of like guys worth 10 million or more wanting to donate in Texas versus like in Oklahoma. I mean, they just have so many people. And so the more money becomes a thing, and being able to kind of put its hands in all the pockets of everybody, is Texas just has a foundation that lets them succeed whenever you can kind of, I don't want to say buy rosters, because that maybe has a bad connotation, but pay players to come play for it. Yeah. And and to be fair, I mean, they're allowed to do that to a certain extent, and fair enough. And Oklahoma just needs to either start winning, so you get better, continue to get the recruits, or they'll find another way, hopefully, to compete a little more on the monetary side of it. But yeah, I think
gotta win so you can recruit, and you gotta recruit so you can win.
Isn't that great? Barry Switzer had one of the great quotes. He goes, "I like recruiting good players because I don't want to know if I'm a good coach." He had just won like his 3rd national championship. It was funny, but he also had about it broke every recruiting violation I think known to man. But hey,
everybody did back in the day.
What we do, we're talking about here, just a couple. What we doing? It's the '80s. We had like 180 people on scholarship. But I need to, if I can, I'm just gonna plug my YouTube channel. We or the Voice of College Football at Oklahoma. We do a Sooner Smiths live stream every Monday. I usually have my wife with me, and we just kind of talk OU football. And we actually get to do some cool things with other sports. My wife is really good at reaching out. Her name is Tyranny, and just kind of we got to go to gymnastics practice and watch them and get to interact with them once. And we're hoping to get to do that with some other programs this year. And it's been really, really fun. So yeah, on Mondays, 7 Central, we stream on YouTube, Oklahoma, the Voice of College Football.
Awesome. We appreciate you coming on and talking to us. We got a couple of things to close out on here, but if you want to get out, we appreciate you once again. Really enjoyed it. Had a good time.
Yeah, and I may reach out to y'all to see if y'all want to come join us on a show later, closer to the season.
Oh, for sure. Just let us
Sorry
know.
to put y'all up. I waited till I was live, so y'all couldn't deny it. So there we go. You guys rock. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Yep.
All right, guys. We want to thank Chad again for coming on and talking to us. That was once again a phenomenal interview. Loved the conversation. This is something that Caleb, Mike, and I was actually talking about today, is that one thing that we really want to start looking for in interviews, and we may even not reach out to certain groups for interviews if we can't find somebody like this, but we just want to find somebody that loves football, loves the sport, loves their team, because the enthusiasm makes it worth it. And that's why we get along with guys like Chad and Chris Phillips and Connor O'Gara so well, and why they keep coming on the show is, we both share the same passion for the sport. And, I think we can have just as good, if not better, of an episode between the two of us doing research about another team than we can someone that doesn't care all that much. So that's kind of where we're going to go going forward. But we're super excited to have Chad on. Love the passion. Love the insight. Do you have anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I will ditto everything that you said, and that's just what makes this fun. We can just be college football fans sitting here chatting about it, not worrying about who's going to click on the video or what we can say to get the most views to bring in the most revenue, but just talk about college football because that's what we love.
Yeah, no, I think I've said it before. The day that I quit having fun will be the last episode we record. Because from the beginning, we started this because we couldn't find the type of content we wanted, and we enjoyed making it. So that's how we're going to do it and how we've always done it. But I'm going to ask y'all to follow us on social media if you haven't already, at nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Just look us up. You will find us there. And most importantly, remember, there is nothing finer in the land
than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.